In the heart of Cape Town, within a dazzling, lavish ballroom, all eyes were on Bongani. This charismatic politician, impeccably dressed in his finest suit, was the very embodiment of success. He exuded an unshakable confidence, a smile that promised a brighter future. By his side, his wife, Leedi, displayed discreet elegance and the perfect smile of a fulfilled woman. But behind that facade of happiness, her broken heart already sensed a painful truth. Something, the very essence of their relationship, was slipping away, melting like snow in the sun. The promises of their love had transformed into a fragile house of cards, ready to collapse at the slightest breath. Bongani, intoxicated by the crowd's adoration, excelled in the art of fiery rhetoric. On stage, he promised schools for children, roads to connect cities, and a radiant future for everyone. Applause erupted, a symphony of praise. But at home, those promises dissolved into a deafening silence. Leedi, patient yet deeply wounded, silently endured her husband's absence and the lack of time he gave to their family. She knew that the man who had once loved her with passion had lost himself in the pursuit of power. Miles away, another woman, Nelly, watched his speech on television. Young, disturbingly beautiful, and with a manipulative intelligence, she held a heavy secret: videos and recordings from their private meetings. While Bongani believed himself to be untouchable, she was meticulously gathering evidence, weapons she intended to use when the time was right. Blinded by his ambition, Bongani thought he controlled every aspect of his life. "No one can touch me," he boasted, laughing. "Even my wife is just an image for the cameras." He didn't know that his contemptuous words were being recorded, transformed into ammunition against him. Meanwhile, Leedi observed silently, but not blindly. She smelled the strange perfume on her husband's clothes, the weight of his lies. Instead of giving in to anger, she chose the strength of silence and hired a discreet private investigator. "A wise woman never fights without weapons," she would say. Nelly, tired of hiding, demanded more than just luxury gifts. She wanted an apartment in her name. When Bongani refused, she brought out her trump cards: the recordings. "I hold your career in my hands," she threatened. But she didn't know that in this game, she wasn't the only one planning a counterattack. The investigator gave Leedi copies of the incriminating videos. Instead of breaking down, Leedi turned her pain into an unshakable force. She decided to take control of the narrative. If a scandal was to break, it would be her, the betrayed wife, who revealed it, not the mistress. At dawn, a media bombshell exploded. The entire nation watched Bongani betray his wife. But the shock was even greater. It wasn't the mistress who had exposed him, but the betrayed wife herself. The people praised her courage and dignity, while Nelly sank into oblivion and shame. Within days, Bongani lost his allies, his reputation, and his honor. The man who saw himself as a king became the laughingstock of all. Sitting with his head in his hands, he whispered, "Leedi, you destroyed me." She replied calmly, "No, Bongani, you destroyed yourself." Leedi became a symbol of dignity. Bongani lived in the ashes of his pride. And Nelly learned too late that power built on lies never lasts. Morality. Pride comes before the fall, but truth, even when painful, always elevates. In the heart of the vibrant city of Cape Town, a sumptuous venue for celebration, where luxury mingled with laughter and hushed conversations, served as the backdrop for Bongani's rise. He wasn't just another guest. He was the centerpiece of the evening, the very embodiment of success, a man with such a powerful aura that it seemed to fill every corner of the ballroom. Dressed in a flawlessly cut custom suit, he exuded a magnetic charisma that drew stares and compliments. His gestures were confident, his smile radiant, and he moved with the ease of a man who knew he was on top of the world. He was the man everyone wanted to be, the friend everyone aspired to have. His words, though mundane, seemed to be endowed with special importance, and everyone he greeted felt honored by his attention. He was the perfect politician, the very image of success that cameras loved to capture and newspapers loved to praise. By his side, Leedi, his wife, maintained the perfect balance of this picture. Her presence was one of discreet elegance, a timeless beauty that didn't seek to steal the show, but to complement it. Her smile, a mask of happiness and serenity, seemed to be living proof of their perfect union. In public, they formed a team, a powerful and inseparable duo. The crowd saw them as a model couple, a source of inspiration for everyone. But beneath this polished and perfect surface, Leedi's heart harbored a dull ache and a chilling certainty. She knew that the facade they presented to the world was fragile, that the cracks were already there. The displayed happiness was a role she played for her husband's sake and for their public image. She felt that the very essence of their relationship was slipping away, sliding through their fingers like sand. Tenderness, complicity, mutual support, all of it had been replaced by a routine, a soulless performance. What they had built together was melting like snow in the sun, slowly but surely. The promises of their love, made with passion long ago, had turned into a fragile house of cards, ready to collapse at the slightest breath. The mask of success was heavy for her to wear, and under its weight, her heart tightened a little more each day, filled with a silent sadness that she hid behind a flawless smile. She knew that her husband's success, however brilliant, did not fill the growing void between them. While Bongani, drunk on his own glory, captivated crowds with his fiery speeches, another reality was unfolding, miles away. The television screen, which was broadcasting his performance live, served as a mirror to the duplicity of his existence. It was on this screen that Nelly, a young, beautiful woman whose intelligence was sharpened by manipulation, watched the show with a smirk. Unlike Bongani's public image, she held the key to his other life, his secret existence. She possessed videos and recordings of their meetings, fragments of time that radically contradicted the image of the family man he projected. These proofs, which she carefully guarded, were her bargaining chips, her life insurance in this dangerous game. She had meticulously documented every moment, every word, every promise, aware that these secrets were a far more powerful weapon than any jewelry or trip he could offer her. The paradox was striking. While Bongani considered himself untouchable, sure of his power and status, he was in fact vulnerable. His blind confidence was his greatest weakness, a flaw exploited by Nelly. She didn't just live in the shadows. She was patiently building a case, a compilation of facts that, once revealed, would have the power to destroy him. Every laugh shared in secret, every whispered confidence, every murmured promise, were pieces added to the puzzle of his potential downfall. She didn't let herself be lulled by his words or promises. She was pragmatic, calculating, and saw beyond his facade of success. Nelly was not a victim, but an actress in this drama, and she played her role with cold determination. The secret she held was not just a simple fact. It was a set of tangible proofs, audio recordings of their conversations and videos of their rendezvous, which would prove his betrayal in broad daylight. She understood the nature of Bongani's power, and she knew it was built on a lie. The fact that he mocked his wife and family, considering their image as a mere media facade, strengthened her conviction that he had no integrity. She had her own motivations, a thirst for recognition that pushed her to take calculated risks. Nelly was not blinded by love or passion. She was guided by an ambition that rivaled Bongani's own. She was the other side of the coin, the dark reflection of Bongani's success. She held the hidden truth, the backstage of the show. And in this silent waiting, she was gathering evidence that, she knew, could one day bring down the entire edifice of his life. In the whirlwind of his meteoric success, Bongani had lost touch with reality. The intoxicating effect of power had made him arrogant, leading him to believe that he was above the law and morality. His pride had become an impenetrable shield, protecting him from any self-doubt or vulnerability. In his mind, he was the master of his destiny, capable of manipulating events and people as he pleased. He saw himself as the king of his own kingdom, and others were merely pawns on his chessboard. He laughed at his own power, openly mocking those who didn't have his influence. He boasted of being untouchable, a fortress that no one could breach. It was in this mindset that he uttered the most contemptuous words of his life, words that would turn against him with devastating force. "No one can touch me," he declared with a condescending laugh. "Even my wife is just an image for the cameras." He didn't know, in his blind arrogance, that these startlingly cruel words were being recorded. He was so sure of himself that he never suspected that one of his moments of weakness could be documented. His words were not just idle talk. They were budding weapons, ammunition that an invisible enemy was meticulously stockpiling. His pride had made him deaf, rendering him unable to hear the implicit warnings, the signs of imminent betrayal. Blinded by his own power, he had underestimated the capacity of others to harm him. He saw his life as a show for which he was the sole director. He thought his wife, Leedi, was nothing more than an accessory, a beautiful image by his side for photos and public events, devoid of any power or will of her own. He had reduced her existence to a simple facade, ignoring the silent strength that was hidden behind the mask of her smile. His pride prevented him from seeing that power was not absolute, that the truth could emerge at any moment. He was so confident in his ability to hide his lies that he had let his guard down, making himself vulnerable. He was convinced he controlled every aspect of his life, but he didn't realize that the higher he rose, the more visible he became, and the more spectacular his fall would be. He had no idea that every word spoken in secret, every hypocritical smile, every act of betrayal was being carefully recorded. He had woven the web of his own misfortune, a trap that he himself had built. Pride had led him to a state of total blindness, making him oblivious to the threat growing in the shadows. While Bongani was intoxicated with his own power and Nelly was preparing her revenge, Leedi was observing with remarkable clarity and strength of character. She was not a woman blinded by love or naivety, but a woman who had chosen wisdom over hysteria. She had seen the signs of betrayal, the subtle clues that were accumulating with troubling regularity. Her husband's late returns home, the scent of a perfume that wasn't hers, the growing emotional distance between them. Each of these details was a confirmation of her doubts, a silent proof of the lie that was undermining their relationship. But instead of giving in to anger, of screaming or confronting her husband, she chose the strength of silence. She understood that silence was not a sign of weakness, but a formidable weapon, a shield that protected her heart and allowed her to think clearly. She refused to play the role of the hysterical, betrayed wife, an image that Bongani could have easily used against her. She chose a more strategic path, a dignified and thoughtful approach. The silence allowed her to keep a cool head, to avoid making regrettable mistakes, and to not reveal her intentions. She decided to fight not with screams, but with evidence. With this in mind, she hired a private investigator, a discreet professional who could do the work of gathering evidence without attracting attention. She had understood that to win this battle, she had to act not on emotion, but with the cold logic of truth. Leedi was not a passive woman waiting for her fate. She was an agent of her own destiny, taking control of the situation. She had a clear vision of the battle to come and was preparing meticulously. Her motto, "A wise woman never fights without weapons," was a reflection of her life philosophy. Tears and screams would not be her weapons. Proof and dignity would be her most powerful allies. She knew that her silence and patience were tools that would allow her to collect the necessary information to turn the tables. She didn't just want to confront her husband. She wanted justice, truth, and dignity. She wasn't seeking petty revenge, but a resolution that would free her and restore her honor. She endured the pain in silence, transforming her suffering into a source of motivation. Every night spent alone, every lie she heard, every clue of betrayal, strengthened her resolve. Her silence was the sound of her preparation, the concentration of an inner force getting ready to be unleashed. She knew that the truth would eventually come out, but she wanted to be the one to reveal it, not the victim who would suffer from it. Tired of living in the shadows, Nelly had decided that the time for discretion was over. The jewelry and luxury trips, which had once been sufficient gratifications, had lost their luster. What she wanted now was a tangible proof of her worth, a recognition of her status that would no longer depend on Bongani's mood. She wanted material security, a solid foundation on which to build her own life, away from the uncertainty of a secret relationship. Her demand was clear. She wanted an apartment in her name, a symbol of power and independence. This request, far from being a whim, was a test of Bongani's loyalty, an opportunity for him to prove that he took her seriously. When Bongani refused her request, his mask of charm cracked. He had underestimated Neli's determination, thinking he could keep her under his control with temporary gifts. His refusal was the spark that lit the fire of revenge. Neli, exasperated by his arrogance, played her trump card. She revealed the existence of her recordings and videos, irrefutable evidence of their meetings. "I hold your career in my hands," she threatened, with a coldness and calm that testified to her seriousness. She thought she had total control of the game, that her threat was enough to make Bongani bend. She was convinced that her blackmail was unstoppable, that Bongani, faced with the destruction of his career and reputation, would have no choice but to submit. But what Neli didn't know was that in this complex game of chess, she wasn't the only one planning a counterattack. She didn't know that Leedi, the woman she considered a simple figurehead, was already one step ahead. Her arrogance, similar to Bongani's, had blinded her. She had believed that her plan was unique, that she was the only one to possess such a weapon. She had not foreseen that the betrayed wife could rise from the ashes and orchestrate her own strategy. By threatening Bongani, she had actually set in motion a series of events that would involve her, but not as she had planned. Her trap, which she thought was perfect, was just a piece of a larger puzzle, the existence of which she was unaware. Neli's trap, although powerful, was also a manifestation of her lack of long-term vision. She was thinking of her own immediate satisfaction, without considering the long-term consequences of her actions. Her desire for possession had pushed her to a point of no return, where she had lost all power to negotiate. She had revealed all her cards, thinking it would give her the upper hand. But she was just a pawn in a bigger battle, a battle she had not started and whose rules she did not fully know. Far from the hysteria and rage that such a shock might have caused in an ordinary woman, Leedi reacted with remarkable inner strength and determination. The moment the investigator handed her the copies of Bongani's videos was not a moment of breakdown, but a moment of transformation. Instead of collapsing under the weight of the betrayal, she drew on her pain to make it a source of unshakable strength. She channeled her suffering, sadness, and rage into a constructive energy, vowing that this pain would not break her, but make her stronger. Leedi didn't just have evidence, she had a vision. She took complete control of the narrative, refusing to be the passive victim of a sordid intrigue. She understood that how the story was told would determine not only Bongani's fate, but also her own reputation. She didn't want the world to see her as a cheated, pitiful woman. She wanted to be seen as a woman of dignity, courage, and power. Her decision was simple and radical. If a scandal was to break, it would be her who initiated it, not the other woman, Neli. This decision was an act of power in itself, a choice that gave her the advantage over the other two protagonists. She meticulously planned the disclosure of the information. She chose the right time and the right media to ensure that the story would be told the way she wanted. She didn't leave her fate to chance. Her counterattack was a masterpiece of strategy and composure. She used dignity as a weapon, showing the world that she was much more than just the wife of a powerful man. She was a force to be reckoned with herself. Her approach disarmed both Bongani and Neli. Bongani didn't expect his wife, whom he considered a mere accessory, to act with such determination. Neli, for her part, had lost control of the narrative. Her threat of blackmail had become useless in the face of Leedi's willingness to reveal everything herself. Leedi's pain was transformed into a powerful engine of change, allowing her to take back control of her life and not let her husband's betrayal define who she was. Her act was an example for all women who suffer in silence, showing that it is possible to rise with dignity and transform your own story. At dawn, as the country was waking up, a media bombshell exploded. The major newspapers and television channels released irrefutable evidence of Bongani's infidelity. The recordings and videos, which had been carefully guarded, were broadcast in broad daylight. The information spread like wildfire, shocking the entire nation. The whole country saw the man it admired, the charismatic politician, betray not only his electorate but also his wife. The perfect image of the family man collapsed under the weight of the truth. The initial shock, however, was followed by an even greater surprise, a revelation that overturned public expectations. The media specified that it was not the mistress who had disclosed the evidence of the betrayal, but the betrayed wife herself, Leedi. This revelation transformed the scandal into a story of courage and dignity. People, who expected to see a woman in tears, discovered a figure of strength and resilience. They were moved by her courage and composure, and her act of dignity was praised by public opinion. Her courage was lauded, and she became a symbol of female strength, a respected voice who had transformed her own tragedy into a lesson for all. Meanwhile, Nelly, the mistress, sank into oblivion and shame. The blackmail she had attempted was rendered futile by Leedi's decision. She had not succeeded in destroying Bongani as she had hoped. Instead, she became a mere footnote in a story that no longer concerned her. She lost her power, her relevance, and her dignity. She was no longer the powerful manipulator, but a woman rejected by public opinion and condemned by the role she had played. The scandal was the moment when the truth came out, freeing Leedi and condemning the others. Leedi's dignity, exposed in broad daylight, elevated her in the eyes of the nation. She was no longer a victim, but a heroine, a woman who had chosen to fight for her honor. Her act proved that dignity and truth are more powerful weapons than lies and manipulation. Bongani's fall was as swift and spectacular as his rise. In just a few days, the man who thought he was on top of the world lost everything. His political allies, who supported him out of self-interest, abandoned him, fearing that his scandal would tarnish their own reputations. His reputation, which had been so carefully built, collapsed, revealing the corruption and lies that supported it. His pride, the only thing he had left, became the target of ridicule and contempt from the public. The man who saw himself as a king became the laughingstock of all, a moral lesson for those who believed in the untouchability of power. Sitting with his head in his hands, in the silence of what was once his empire, he whispered, with a hint of despair in his voice, "Leedi, you destroyed me." In his defeat, he sought to blame his wife, refusing to acknowledge his own responsibility. But Leedi, with a dignity and serenity that surprised him, replied calmly, "No, Bongani, you destroyed yourself." Her response was not an accusation, but a simple truth, a statement of fact. He had not been destroyed by his wife or the other woman, but by his own choices, his own lies, his own pride. Bongani had to face the reality of his own destruction. The man who thought he was invincible was defeated by his own character. He lost not only his career and his status, but also his family and his dignity. He lived among the ashes of his pride, a broken and despised man, while Leedi was elevated and Nelly fell into oblivion. To those who cheat, know that power and lies always turn against you. Success built on infidelity is fragile, and the truth, sooner or later, shatters it. Power can be blinding, but the light of truth has a force that can destroy the greatest careers. Lies are like debts, which must be repaid with high interest. Betrayal is not a simple error in judgment. It is a choice that has long-term consequences. And to those who believe they are above everything, know that pride is the first step toward a fall. People who think they can manipulate the lives of others and get away with it will eventually reap what they sow. Life is a great game of karma, and actions have consequences that cannot be avoided. Success can only be lasting if it is based on integrity and honesty. To those who suffer in silence, know that silence is sometimes a weapon stronger than screams. It allows you to prepare, to think, to plan, and not to reveal your vulnerability to the enemy. Silence is not a weakness, but a strength, a shield that protects you and gives you time to gather your forces. By not reacting to emotion, you can take control of your own story and your destiny. Your pain can be transformed into strength, and your silence into a powerful counterattack. Never underestimate the quiet strength of a woman who has decided to fight with dignity. Silence is not resignation, but preparation. To those who manipulate, know that secrets used to harm will always burn the one who holds them. The power of manipulation is fleeting. The secrets you keep and use to blackmail others will eventually consume you. Revenge may seem sweet at first, but it leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. Your power over others is an illusion, and one day, the truth will come out and your manipulation will be revealed in broad daylight. The truth has a liberating force, and it will not only free the victim, but it will also force you to face your own demons. Morality is a more powerful force than any blackmail tactic. Finally, to all, know that the truth always comes out, and it sets you free. It can be painful, but it is the only path to true dignity and true freedom.